Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another session of the 7th Annual Economic Forum. I am Marianna, Skylakakis, founder and editor of αθηΝΕΑ. I am chairing the 6th thematic discussion, that of education, the most important lever for growth in Greece. We have the honor and pleasure of having with us Niki Kerameus, Minister of Education and Religious Affairs. Welcome. Thank you for the invitation. I think that the most decisive step in a country is that of education in order for us to prepare for Entrepreneurship 2.0. So my question is, how, as a state, are you preparing the labor market for these different demands? Demands in relation to skills, in relation to knowledge that is ushered in by this new era? Well, that is a tough question. Let me begin with what you said, knowledge and skills. And I say this because I believe that an educational system should offer both. Of course, the major mission of an educational system is to transmit knowledge, but I believe that cultivating skills, that is also a sector, an area which acquires greater and greater importance in education in general. And why am I stressing skills? Because the world will be changing at a greater pace in 2035, and everything, all studies show that whereas in the past you would study one thing and get a job on that particular sector. Now we see that people change jobs, and this will be more the case in the future. So you need to cultivate skills in children, skills which will allow them to constantly adjust in an ever-changing world. So how do we prepare it? It's a bottom-up approach, meaning we start from nursery school, and this is why, because years in nursery school are formative years. There is a lot of information, and we see that most synapses are created till the age of 6, which is why we decided to start the age to go to nursery school is 4, and this is something all over Greece. So we have English being taught in nursery school. Why? Because we want to offer more skills to our children. I'm talking about language skills. This was a practice in private schools, but not in public primary nursery schools. So we want to offer equal opportunities to all children. And this is why we did it, but also because, according to international studies, a child that is called upon to handle more than one languages, well, this allows it to develop more skills. So nursery school starts at the age of 4, English in nursery school. So we have a new policy, new subjects. So we're talking about the skills workshops. What are they? They're new subjects. It's just like maths, history, physics, ancient Greek. So in the same way, we have road safety, climate change, entrepreneurship, vocational training, sex education. So all these new subjects are part of the mandatory all-day primary school. It's equally important to learn how to behave in society, to respect people with handicaps, to set your limits and see where other people's rights begin and where yours end. So we also have, it's equally important as to being good in math, history, etc. So who will teach all this? Our teachers. We need to have training, teacher training. So we're talking about skills workshops. And they started this year on a pilot basis in Greece, but we had training of all our teachers, training on this new philosophy, because I think this underscores a new philosophy. Now, a new curricula. So we're talking about the material taught in schools. And a couple of days ago, we presented 166 new curricula. The new curricula lead to new textbooks. And those of you who have children have noticed that, unfortunately, many of the books we have in schools are very old. There is an IT book which talks about storing data on a disk. If I tell my son about these disks as a storage facilities, they'll think I'm from outer space. So how we teach changes, what we teach teachers. We have a more experiential approach. Instead of children called upon to memorize historical events. So there's no parrot learning. Now they play roles. For example, a historical figure, and the teacher will say to you, you are so-and-so. Write a letter as if you were that person and that time period. So it's more experiential, more creative, and more critical. So the main aim is for this to be analyzed in greater depth for the children, so the children may understand root causes, consequences, and so on and so forth. So we need to train our teachers. We changed the curricula. We have more experimental schools, more model schools in Greece in order to offer more opportunities regardless of the family you come from, and also minimum requirements for entry into universities. Just about a year ago, somebody could get into Greek university getting a 0.6 out of 20 in a subject. That's impossible. Now we have a minimum, if you like, base. This is determined by the universities themselves. This shows that there is a great change in philosophy. So we have a minimum passing score. Why? Because we want our children to actually be able to study something with a future. If somebody gets into university with a very low grade, the possibility of this child graduating and getting a job in this field is very unlikely. And of course, we're talking about training, we're talking about national universities and colleges. So children will be free to choose what they like. And this is why we have a parallel system. So the children can now not just choose to go to a Greek university when they describe their preferences, but we also know that there's a big demand for web designers. There's a big demand from the labor market. And because we understood that there's this need, almost in half public vocational training centers, we now have this course in web design. So whatever's offered in these colleges is based on market needs. So we go and see what is needed in the Cyclades, what tourist professions, what is needed in Western Macedonia because of delignification. So we're looking at specific professions, for example, technicians dealing with renewable energy sources. There's a high demand for this, and this will increase in the coming years. So we have to offer these specialties when it comes to professional training. So there needs to be a closer link to the labor market. And finally, I don't want to be long-winded. There be greater freedom given to the universities. So we have the possibility for universities to choose the rate, the minimum pass score. And for example, the chemical department of Athens say that I want the students that will pass into my university for them to get at least so much in chemistry, at least so much in composition, and so on and so forth. So it is the universities that will determine the entry criteria for the students who will then study there. And this is self-evident in other countries. But now it's time for us to do the same in Greece, to do the self-evident. A university department where for the first time we have funding of universities which is linked to objective criteria but also quality criteria. Mrs. Skylakakis, when I went to the Ministry of Education, one of the first decisions I had to sign was the annual funding given to universities. And they provided a long list of universities in Greece, university departments, and then 23 blank boxes. And I asked, how will this funding be decided? And they say, well, it's up to you. You can judge and decide. And I thought this was unthinkable. This is why we have a regulatory framework in place according to which funding is linked to objective criteria, number of students, number of professors, number of departments, geographical, if you like, spread. It's different if you have one university which is in one location and one that is spread over, for example, 5 islands. And the funding will also be linked to the evaluation, the assessment. And I think that it's the only, so universities depend at least to a certain percentage on the assessment they receive. And I think that the university should be very proud of the step that has been made. They've become more autonomous, but also the quality of university education has been upscaled. And then we dealt with a problem of eternal students. All these are measures for us to have better skills for our children, because that is the ultimate objective. Of course, I understand that there's a change in philosophy. A lot of things are happening in all levels of education. Now, a question comes to mind: the difficulty of the state designing things now when the future of labor is so uncertain, when we don't know exactly what will happen in the labor market. So how do you incorporate this uncertainty in your policy? Well, one word: using skills. So we no longer have a system that just educates you, but the question is learning how to learn. So the system will teach you how to learn. We don't know what the future needs will be. So your duty as the state is to provide the children skills that will allow them to constantly adjust. And because will have an ever-changing future, the duty, the obligation of the state is to give the children the possibility, for example, to manage the information, because there's this barrage of information. They should be able to identify what is useful and what is useless, what is good and what is bad. So you need to give them skills. What do we mean by skills? Critical thinking, for example, problem solving, empathy. These are important skills, critical skills that will allow our children, when they complete their studies and their education, to be resilient and to be versatile and to adjust constantly. You cannot predict the future, but you can give them the skills to adapt in the future. And I remember when I was a child that we talked about specialization, that you need to learn something very well, something very specific. And I understand from what you said and your policies that you have an even broader range in this new reality. Do you agree? Yes, it's a different approach. Meaning, yes, it's good to have an in-depth knowledge. It's good to have general knowledge, but the thing is, how can you manage your knowledge and how can you handle things? So again, we come to the issue of skills and the emphasis that we place on cultivating these skills through 4 thematic axes. How do we cultivate skills? This is what we have in the Greek educational system. We have 4 thematic axes. The one has to do with ευζήν, to live well, a good nutrition, sex education. The second has to do with the environment, climate change, protecting the environment, prevention against natural disasters, taking precautionary measures. Then we're talking about rights, respecting others, respecting people who are different, volunteerism, offering to society. And the 4th axis has to do with innovation and creation, robotics, STEM, STEAM, entrepreneurship, school vocational orientation, vocational guidance. So these are 4 thematic pillars or axes, and thus we cultivate these 4 important skills. And so I'd like to say that so far, I see the children being very enthusiastic about these changes, and I'd like to tell you a story. The other day, I was in a public school in Attica, and I went into a class. It was 4th grade of primary school. I just wanted to say hi and leave. I sat there for a long time because we had this lovely discussion in this class. 4th graders, they talked what empathy was. This is 4th grade of primary school. And then they analyzed how Mount Kilimanjaro at its top has less snow than what it had 10 years ago, and why this is due to climate change. And I thought, well, did we think the same way? Did we have this way of thinking when we were at that age? So we want the next generation to be better from the previous generation. I think that the next generation will definitely be better than ours, and I think that we are helping them a great deal. At this point, I want to invite 2 people who are experts on the subject so that we can broaden this subject. Mr. Theofilos Vasileiadis, CEO and founder of kariera.gr, and Mrs. Rebecca Pitsika, CEO of People for Business. You have the floor.
So, welcome, first of all. Thank you, welcome, Ms. Pitsika. I'd like us to expand our discussion, starting from an X-ray, let's say, give an X-ray image of where we are and what we're missing in terms of HR and skills. So, Mr. Vasileiadis, give us your perspective. What is the actual picture of the Greek labor market? The gentleman's microphone is not working. It's apparently off. The microphone is not working. I will fully agree with the Minister regarding skills. The truth of the matter is that the world that is changing so fast, as we saw in the case of the pandemic, any discussion about the skills that will be required 2035 or not even there, 2028, 2027, when for people who are currently studying at university for Greece, too, makes no sense. It may some sense for policy that needs to be designed, but in terms of businesses and the economy, what matters is what will happen next year, in a few months. What's going to happen now that so many people who actually leave the Greek market, labor market, without even moving abroad because they can work remotely. So any professional without any data visibility or for the foresight that we're discussing today, how can they operate? So this is linked to a fourth level education, as I would call it, everything that happens after graduation from university. And of course, we need the policy to set the framework, but we need also the people who need to learn, not only people who are currently students, but also those who are already employed in businesses. Organizations need to teach their people to learn all the time, to unlearn and learn again. So to be constantly reskilled, to people, this has to be taught to people who are currently 40, 45 and still have a long career ahead of them. Now, Ms. Pitsika, I'd like to ask you, what is the role of employees in all this? Because I understand that when we talk about people who are already in the labor market, there are things that the state can do, but I believe that a lot can be done by businesses themselves, isn't there? Well, I'd like to say that I'm going to agree with both the Minister and Theofilos regarding how employees and businesses alike need to invest in knowledge and skills. What we see in businesses, the following paradox. Businesses place emphasis on both retraining and reskilling of people at this time when employees, because due to the pre-existing education system, are not accustomed to being skilled and reskilled, and acquiring soft skills. They place emphasis in getting certificates and diplomas, etc. So they lack critical thinking, team working, communication, all these soft skills that are critical factors. In which, however, employees do not invest. At the same time, I've talked about training and retraining, which is very important. In Greece, however, according to a recent survey that I've read, approximately 27% of businesses invest in the reskilling or retraining of their employees at the when the EU average is 72%. There's a huge gap, you realize. So it's very important for businesses to realize the need of investing in lifelong learning, even more so when the cost of replacement or new hiring, because this is something we also see in the the labor market. I'm not happy with this new employee, so bring me a new one. But the cost of turnover is 25% higher than retaining the same employee and investing in them. It's what you're saying is very interesting with regard to how well people are prepared from the education system to acquire new knowledge over time. And I'm asking you, Minister, how large is the gap between the academia and the business world? And what initiatives are you taking in order to bridge this gap? Because it's very important. First of all, the gap does exist in not only in our country, but in our country, it's more pronounced. So what do we do? First of all, what we have done, invest in skills. in a tangible manner through new courses, new subjects, and this is why these subjects have to be part of the mandatory curriculum, so that this is conveyed to the teaching staff of the country, of our country, which has been very adaptable and adjustable. It has proved how fast they adapted overnight almost to the new situation caused by the pandemic. And I'd like to thank our teachers around the country who have worked so hard and tried so hard in order to cater for the needs of the students during the pandemic. So, first of all, placing emphasis in the acquisition of skills through the skills workshops. Then our books, our textbooks. Our textbooks are not going to be a single textbook. Now we've got multiple textbooks. Why is this important? Because, as Mr. Pitsika said, because we move away from one single textbook, which tempts everyone to learn it by heart. But when you have got more than one sources, 2 or 3 sources, you need to combine knowledge and therefore cultivate your critical thinking. And this leads to getting more skills. And when they come out, when young children come out, enter the labor market, will be better prepared. Then we have got the career orientation, which has been introduced in the third year of junior high school. Why that? Because according to the Educational Policy Institute, is the most critical year for children to make decisions, so they need to have as much data as possible, as many data as possible in order to make their decision, as much data as possible. Then internship or practice in vocational training and institutes and university, because in forthcoming period we're going to invest a lot in our universities, where we have followed a bottom-up approach, starting from nursery schools, primary schools, secondary schools, university entry exams, and now we are going to focus on our universities. And one of our initiatives will be to have a more extensive framework, institutional framework for internships and apprenticeships, but internships and placements both for universities and employers. And this is going to be key to bridging the gap between education and labor market needs. And with regard to vocational education and training, I believe our effort to bridging the gap will become more manifest, because on top of seeing what kind of educators we have or teachers we have, we're going, and based on that, see what kind of training we will offer. On the contrary, we're going to look into the needs, the labor market needs, and then decide on the curricula. In Florida, for instance, we have got a new training institute with, a new curriculum that will focus on the training of RES engineers. Okay, good. So, Mr. Vasileiadis, please tell me now how young people react to all this. Do they want different things, different from previous generations as employees? And this is going to be interesting, both the employers and the state. Well, first of all, I'd like to pick up from where the minister left off regarding internship and practice. Apart from the after studies, this is a major need, and because there is no legislation, employers cannot use people or hire people for internships and placement. Now, if the young people see what it means to actually work, then the discussion will become more practical, because, and we're going to see it over time. For sometimes we hear that the millennials and the Z generation want more impact of what they do. They want more work-life balance. My question is, will they be willing to get 30% less, to earn 30% less in order to have more work-life balance? Because, okay, this is good in theory, they may say, okay, when they earn 3,000, they might say that I would be happy with 2,000 in order to have more balance, work-life balance. But would they say the same if they earn 900 euro per month? So having an understanding of the actual working environment would make a huge difference. So they will tell us what they want when they actually start working, unless the education system can bring them closer to the labor market. It is impressive indeed. I think in our first job, we all got a different picture of the world and of the labor market, of how things work than before we worked. So this is a key priority. Another priority that emerges as we exit on this prolonged crisis is that of brain drain. A lot of worthy young people left the country. And I wonder whether Miss Pitsika could give us a picture of what some of these people want in order to come back, in order to enrich the labor market and the labor force of our country with the knowledge and skills and experience. These are very interesting questions, because quite often we hear from companies that we work with that they want people from abroad. They want us to attract young people from abroad, to give them the right packages, to offer them the right packages. It has to do with whom we're talking about. First of all, brain drain and brain gain are questionable, because it's not a bad thing for young people to study abroad and work abroad for a while in order to earn experiences, but to gain experiences. The thing is whether they can come back to their country. If we look at different age groups, I'd say that it is easier to attract those people who have graduated abroad and worked for a couple of years, and then they are looking for opportunity to come back to their country. And also the age of 45 and 50, people the age of 45 and 50 who, having brought up their children, they want to come back to their home country. The intermediate ages, the experienced executives are difficult to move because they have built their life there. They may have got a loan in order to buy a house. Their children are going to school, so they're difficult to come back. Is this good or bad? Well, but the world is changing, the working environment is changing. In the modern world, the contemporary world, where we're talking a hybrid working model in the next 5 years, and Mr. Mastrogiorgiou says in his service about foresight, we'll be talking about a metaverse environment where it's not going to be myself working, but possibly my digital avatar. So what we need to have for Greek businesses to be attractive, first of all, to give perspective to young people, to learn and evolve. This is what young people ask. Am I going to learn more? Am I going to develop and evolve? Obviously, a good remuneration package is attractive. The employment cost is a key parameter. The overall employment cost, or salary and employer cost, is very important in order to offer better packages. So education, training, incentives, flexible working environment, these are key parameters for Greek businesses to attract people from the global labor market, regardless of their presence, physical or digital presence. Okay, so we're talking about bridging a gap with regard to businesses and employees. I'd like us to talk about these initiatives of spin-offs. Now, how is this linked, Minister, with this discussion? Well, this has to do with how research, university research, and research performed by research centers can be commercialized, can be used for business purposes and lead to communication. Recently, in collaboration with the Ministry of Development, we, for the first time, passed a legislative framework for spin-offs. It's, in essence, it is the procedure to set up a spin-off is simplified. Incentives are given to our academic, to academia to take part in these spin-offs for their past experience and past service to be taken into account in order for them to evolve. So incentives for involvement and participation, and a an extensive, comprehensive framework that will ensure a link between production, research, and labor market and the solutions required.
The
recent spin-off, or rather, a research solution that materialized concerned digital assistants. From a certain age onwards, this is a solution that the society needs, and indeed it's happening thanks to academic research, and indeed it's leading up to commercial products that are benefiting the society. This is a very interesting solution, says the moderator, and I think there are many such solutions that can come through research conducted in Greece, just as long as we find ways to connect the two. I can't help but wonder to what extent Greece could become a hub for education of the next few years. Mr. Vasileiadis, what is your take on this? I'm asking this question to all three of you, but over to you first. Thank you for letting me kick off. Maybe I am ruining the party or throwing a wet blanket. I think we have a huge opportunity as a country to change gears, to move forward. There's an impetus, there's a mood on the part of the government, but there's so many needs. And the fact that we don't have the right people is a bomb at the foundations of Greece 2.0. What I really don't care about is new foreign investors, but I want us right here, right now. We're not the United States of America. We're a small Southern European country, and what I care most is how we can possibly invest all our resources to train and educate everyone, from kindergarten to those who are about to retire. So sorry for rephrasing the question, but the main question is how can we not waste one single resource, because we have to find skills. We have to find the people with education, with knowledge, with experience and skills. That's the main thing we need to win this wager. So more initiatives in this field, and you believe this is prioritized or ought to be prioritized. Yes, you know what, businesses always want to do so many things, but normally the resources are limited, and the same goes for the state. It's a good thing that the government in power understands that. For 30 years, they failed to understand the fact that there is no such thing as limitless resources. So we have to remember that, or else everything will be at stake. And of course, we have to keep our focus. Ms. Pitsika, do you agree? Do you have a different take on this? I would partly agree with Theofilos as concerns the following. We are going through a radical overhauling of the educational system, and so it's very important to see what we can do to help it, to sustain it, to improve it in terms of skills, of how to stop learning things by rote in order to develop other skills, to add new techniques, to add new knowledge. All of that is very, very important, starting from the level of kindergartens and all the way to tertiary education, that is colleges and universities. And from that point onwards, of course, it's critical to become an education hub. Cyprus managed to put it within a few years. Being such an education hub would signify more revenue for the country, plus attracting brains. So if it's not our top priority, maybe it should be the second best. And moreover, we have very good edifices and buildings in Spetses, the Energerio school, which is gradually being utilized. We can create campuses on all levels, not just for the benefit of colleges and universities, but also for senior and junior high schools. That would also generate revenue. I have this Cypriot example in mind, and that's why I asked this question. So I'm coming to you, Minister. By way of conclusion, is this a priority and can it happen? Allow me, says the Minister, after what Mr. Vasileiadis said, to be challenging and provocative. One thing won't exclude the other. So a few weeks ago, at the level of the National Technical University, an announcement was made. It's going to team up with Columbia University in New York, and they will be giving a degree, a shared degree between the two of them, and that's available and up for grabs for Greek students. So this is meaningful. It's not just about bringing in foreign students, but it's also important to provide new opportunities to our own students. At any event, there is the political volition to make things happen. Of course, we have to invest in our own human resources, and including professors and teachers. It's no accident that over the years, the 2 years that we are in power, we appointed permanent staff after 12 years. Each and every year, about 2,000 or until 2,000, 7,000 would retire, and we failed to hire a single teacher and professor. You have to invest that way. Human resources are the most valuable thing you have in education, or else you won't be able to make changes happen. So, of course, priority is given to investing on the domestic human resources. These are changes of rational and paradigm. They would call for time. You need time to see the outcomes of such changes. But then again, I also think that one invests in the education of our country by providing our own universities with scope to claim their own position in the academic map of the world. I believe we have excellent universities. It's no accident that many Greek students graduate from Greek universities and excel abroad. How many times have we had stories about Greek students who graduated from Greek universities and excelled abroad? This is no accident, nor is it random, but I also think that globally speaking, our universities do not have the position, or rather the acknowledgement and the recognition they ought to have. We provided universities with scope to put together postgraduate degrees or even graduate degrees in foreign languages. We have English-speaking medical studies. It started in Thessaloniki. There were 60 positions for new students. There were more than 1,000 who applied for that. Then we had the Athens University Medical School in English courses. There's another Greek university doing that pretty soon. So this is a noble competition between and amongst universities, and between Yale and the Athens University, or Johns Hopkins and Ionian University, the International University of Greece, and the NYU. All of the aforementioned are teaming up. These are collaborations that I think are providing a lot to our universities and human resources. So by way of answer to your question, Ms. Skylakakis, I'd say yes, we can do it, but our objective is to upgrade the education of Greece by taking initiatives like the ones that I mentioned before to provide better opportunities and scope for knowledge and acquisition of experience and skills to our children, but we also claim the position we are worthy of in the global arena. We, of course, are wishing you the best. I think we are concluding on a more positive note. Thank you very much, all three of you, for this interesting discussion, and there will be a short lunch break, I'm told. Thank you very much.